Hello everyone and welcome to this first part of two videos on compositing in Nuke Studio. On the previous video we covered the soft effects and how we could color grade and transform and crop our footage or even retime it using the time warp. So on this video we'll cover how to create a comp container using the create comp option, then go into that comp container and start working in the node graph to do our compositing. We'll pull a key and bring a background, do some compositing there, and then we'll come back into the timeline and look at how we can render that. Okay, so let's start. What I can do is to right click on the script on the file that I want to create a comp on and select create comp. That will create a new clip for me with my Nuke script and my renders ready. And so what we have is a new video track called VFX with our clip on top of it, and it's this burgundy color. It is not rendered yet. So let me show you what it is. So in our bins we have a folder called VFX that relates exactly to the same to our track. And then if I open it, I have two items in there. I have my Nuke script, you can see it with the Nuke logo on the top left, and it's an NK file, and below is my render, which again I haven't done yet. So let's actually dive into that comp container to go into the node graph and start our compositing. To start working on it, what I'm going to do is not open it separately, but all you have to do in your timeline is to double click the comp container, and when you double click it, it opens that file in your node graph. So now I'm ready to start doing my comp. What you get on your node graph is at the top is your actual shot. You see, shot 30 is a backdrop with that information, with your actual read node of the original footage, then reformatted to the size of my timeline, then with the frame range set up based on what I asked for the handles and the frame numbers that I wanted to use. And then I have my soft effects exactly the same as I had them on the timeline. So let me actually split my screen here for a moment. And let's move my node graph into this side so we can compare exactly what is going on my clip. So you can see, again, my footage, and then my soft effects are applied here exactly the same way as they were applied on my timeline. So that is the first part of my script, and then at the bottom what I have is already set up for me my added timecode, so the timecode that relates to that timeline, and then the render that is going to use exactly the same name, so shot 30 comp version 1, and that'll be able to pick it up straight away when I render. And then at the bottom, if I have done any annotations, which I haven't shown you yet, you have your pre-comp node to have a look at those annotations. So let's do quite quickly a little bit of compositing here. So what I'm going to do is let's move to a frame that we see the character, and I'm going to pull a key to remove that green screen. So let's add a key light. To add a key light, you can press tab and search for key light. And now I have my first node added into my comp. Now I have it on the properties, and I can go and select the color of my screen. So if I do Control and Shift, I can select the area that I want to remove. If I press A, I'll be able to look at the alpha that I'm generating. So clearly it's not clean enough, so I'm going to just move the screen gain a little bit, and I'm going to start making this a little bit stronger. So let's do the screen matte and do a little clipping here and make sure I get a good clean. If you want to learn more about the key light and how to do compositing Nuke in the node graph, you can have a look at some of the videos that we have specifically for that. So I'm going to very quickly just add a background so we can render this. I'm going to go into my footage, and I know I have my background here, and I'm just going to add one of these into node graph. But it's really nice. I can just drag and drop it into my node graph here. And by selecting the background input of my key light, I can merge that on top of each other. Let's take the A off. And if I change this from final result to composite, I'll be looking at the final comp. I'll be able to reformat this and transform it and do something. But let's say this is my first attempt at the key and my first version of this comp. So I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do is save this. So I'm simply going to go and say File, Save Comp, or Control S. And now when I come back into the timeline, I can render that here. Now, by default, I have 3 ways of rendering. I can render as soon as I save, or I can render only when I change versions, or only manually. So in this case, I have it set manually, so I could show you that. But you can have it automatically if you actually go into the preferences of Nuke Studio. You can go into threads and processes, and here you have background renders. So right now I have a do not start background renders, but I can also use start background renders on comp save, or start background render on comp save and version change. So I'm going to put it in that, so I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to come back in here and just press Ctrl S, and you see how immediately this starts rendering through my comp. And if I come to the frames that have been already rendered, I can start seeing what is going on there. Okay, so we have had a look at how our node graph is laid out when we create a comp from Nuke Studio, and how we can save it and see it rendering, and the 3 types of render that we can have on the timeline. And on the next video, we'll have a look at how we do the versioning system and swap between the different versions on my comps and the different states that a comp container could be. All right, I'll see you on the next video.